Iraq's parliament approved the remainder of Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi's cabinet, making Ihsan Abdul Jabbar Ismail oil minister and passing the candidates for 6 other government posts. Al-Kadhimi became Prime Minister last month after 5 months of political deadlock after his predecessor Adil Abdul Mahdi resigned under pressure from mass anti-government protests. Parliament had approved all but 7 members of a cabinet of 22 portfolios. They passed the nominees for the oil, foreign, trade, culture, agriculture, justice and migration ministries. Thousands of Israelis demonstrated against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plan to extend sovereignty over parts of the occupied West Bank, de facto annexation of land that the Palestinians seek for a state. Protesting in face masks and keeping their distance from each other under new coronavirus restrictions, the demonstrators gathered under the banner "No to annexation, no to occupation, yes to peace and democracy." The Palestinians want an independent state in the West Bank, East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip, territories Israel captured in a 1967 Middle East war. Turks streamed outside for their first weekend without a coronavirus lockdown in nearly 2 months, the day after President Recep Tayyip Erdogan suddenly scrapped a stay-at-home order. Cafes, restaurants and other facilities had reopened today as infection rates slowed and restrictions on intercity travel had been lifted as the infection rate slowed. But Erdogan had intended to maintain the weekend lockdown applied to big cities since April 11th until a public backlash. Hundreds of Lebanese protesters took to the streets to voice outrage over the government's handling of a deep economic crisis, with security forces firing tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse rock-throwing demonstrators. Hundreds filled the streets in and around the protest hub of Martyrs Square in the center of Beirut, blaming the lack of government reforms for the economic crisis. Some waved banners demanding better living conditions and called for early parliamentary elections and tougher measures to fight corruption. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia welcomed Egypt's efforts to resolve the Libyan conflict. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi announced a new peace initiative for Libya that proposed a ceasefire starting today. Riyadh stressed it welcomes all international efforts that call for a ceasefire in the North African country and a return to the political process in line with the relevant United Nations resolutions and various initiatives including the Berlin and Geneva conferences. Turkey is reportedly preparing to launch a military attack in the northwestern Syrian province of Idlib at a time when Defense Minister Hulusi Akar and senior Turkish armed forces officers inspected the military units operating near the Syrian border. The Turkish officers inspected the military units along the Syrian border, and they also held online and face-to-face meetings with the commanders of the units. The newspaper said Turkish forces are in full alert and ready to confront any attack launched by the Syrian president regime. The International Monetary Fund has reached an agreement with authorities in Egypt to allocate $5.2 billion to help the country cope with the economic fallout of the coronavirus outbreak. The agreement, which must go to the Executive Board for final approval, comes on top of a $2.77 billion IMF loan approved to Egypt last month. Egypt, the Arab world's most populous country, emerged last year from an ambitious reform program designed to overhaul its ailing economy. The Arab Monetary Fund agreed to provide loans of $211 million to Morocco and $98 million to Tunisia to help the North African countries deal with the coronavirus crisis. Both Morocco and Tunisia rely heavily on the hard-hit tourism sector as a source of hard currency. The IMF is currently looking into financing requests from other member countries and is processing the requests through expeditious procedures in order to provide support as quickly as possible so that the borrowing member countries can meet financing needs and enhance their financial positions to face various challenges, especially during such times. Thousands of people took to the streets in European and Asian cities demonstrating in support of US protests against police brutality. The rolling global protests reflect rising anger over police treatment of ethnic minorities, sparked by the May 25th killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Many thousands had also crowded into the square outside Parliament, holding placards reading "Black Lives Matter," ignoring government advice to avoid large gatherings due to the risk from the coronavirus. Emergency medical aid organized under the auspices of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or the OIC, has arrived at Kabul International Airport, ready to be delivered to the Afghan Ministries of Foreign Affairs and Public Health to combat COVID-19 pandemic. The aid parcels containing disposable medical masks, specialized N95 hospital masks, and protective clothing for quarantine personnel were handed over to the Afghan authorities in presence of OIC's resident representatives in Kabul. An agreement between the Italian government and the Union of Islamic Communities and Organizations in Italy will allow imams to offer spiritual assistance to Muslim inmates detained in Italian prisons. The Memorandum of Understanding follows an agreement signed last month between Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte and representatives from Islamic communities in Italy on the reopening of mosques and prayer rooms as part of the country's phase 2 response to the coronavirus disease crisis. The agreement is considered by Muslim representatives as a step toward official recognition of Islam and a religion in Italy. OPEC and allied nations agreed to extend a production cut of nearly 10 million barrels of oil a day through the end of July, hoping to boost energy prices hard hit by the coronavirus pandemic. Ministers of the group in outside nations like Russia met via video conference to adopt the measure aimed at cutting out the excess production depressing prices as global aviation remains largely grounded due to the pandemic. It represents some 10% of the world's overall supply. By formally clinching the U.S. Democratic presidential nomination, Joe Biden is set for a bruising challenge to President Donald Trump that will play out against the unprecedented backdrop of a pandemic, economic collapse, and civil unrest. The former vice president has effectively been his party's leader since his last challenger in the Democratic primary, Bernie Sanders, ended his campaign in April. But Biden pulled together the 1,991 delegates needed to become the nominee after 7 states and the District of Columbia held presidential primaries Tuesday. The Eastern Province Municipality has inaugurated the first innovative mobile food truck for selling fruits and vegetables amid the precautionary measures being taken to curb the spread of novel coronavirus, and also ridding the crowding of customers at centers for selling foodstuffs. The objective is to provide safe shopping from one's vehicle without the need to get down purchasing these needs. The initiative gives the opportunity to Saudi youth to sell their products according to high hygienic and health standards at the points of sales.